December 7th, and ended on December 15th. The last night was the last night of Hanukkah. All right, we're going to, before we get into our Torah lesson, which is, I did not give you this handout, I'm going to read it. So a little bit about Hanukkah. So I'll just read it, just listen to what we're going to say, and then we'll get into our Torah lesson. All right, Hanukkah is not a holy day or a feast day. So as such, it's of you might call it minor significance or importance. It's not anything we, I don't know. It's not, we don't put it in with the same importance as Torah, because it's not the Torah thing. Okay, but it is important. And believe it or not, Christ did respect it or honor it. And where do we find that? How do we know that? It's in John 10, verse 22. So if you look at that, it says, and it was at Jerusalem, the feast of the dedication, and it was winter, and Jesus walked in the temple in Solomon's porch. That's all we know about Hanukkah in the Bible. So the very fact that Jesus, that it's mentioned and associated with Jesus' name, gives it credibility. And so we need to know a little bit about it, at least, because the Jews really enjoy keeping it. And if you ever listen to Adam Sandler, he made it popular with the Hanukkah song. So that's kind of a humorous take on Hanukkah, but it brought it to the attention of the world. So anyway, we'll try to figure out why this is significant. Okay, Hanukkah, the events of Hanukkah took place in the Bible, or I shouldn't say in the Bible, but between the Old and New Testament. So let's take a look at, let's get a little more information about that. How many years were between the Old and New Testament, between Malachi and Matthew? How many years is that? Anybody want to venture a guess? It was about 400 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And here's what I pulled up. I Googled that and got this information. I think it's from Wikipedia. Traditionally, it is considered to cover roughly 400 years, spanning the ministry of Malachi from 420 BC to the appearance of John the Baptist in the early first century AD. It is roughly contiguous with the Second Temple period, 516 BC to 70 AD, and encompasses the age of Hellenistic Judaism. Okay, so now we know where in history that Hanukkah took place. What else was going on between the Old and New Testament? Does anybody have a guess on that? What major world event was happening between the Old and New Testament? Anybody know?
Hellenism?
Okay, that's a good guess. We just read that in the Wikipedia. It was actually the time of Alexander the Great. Okay, Alexander the Great was born in 356 BC, and by the time he was 19, this is when he started conquering the world. He was a brilliant general, and he conquered the world till right up to about his death, which was early. He died young in 323 BC, and he was only like 33 years old when he died. So they kind of a tie-in with Christ, but that's the only tie-in, just his age. So if you want to make a mental note of that, that's between the Old and New Testament was the time of Alexander the Great. So when he stopped his conquests, his way of rewarding the people that had helped him were his 4 Greek generals. Alexander was a Greek. And he rewarded his Greek generals by dividing up the known world, or at least the area of his conquest, divided that world up between these generals. And the general that got the area of the Holy Land, or Jerusalem, was Antiochus Epiphanes. Antiochus for the fourth Epiphanes. All right, so here's where this little handout starts. It says, what is Hanukkah and why is it celebrated? Hanukkah with an H or with a CH, celebrates the Maccabean revolt against the Syrian Greek army. In the 2nd century BC, the Holy Land was ruled by the Syrian king, one of Alexander's generals, Antiochus IV Epiphanes, who told the Jewish people they must renounce their religion and accept Greek beliefs or be sentenced to death. Hanukkah is also known as the Festival of Lights, and is a Jewish festival commemorating the recovery of Jerusalem and subsequent rededication of the temple at the beginning of the Maccabean revolt against the Seleucid Empire in the 2nd century BCE, before Christ. All right, at this point, we want to pretend that we're looking at time and history, and we're going to pull out, look over the big picture, okay? So we know that the Hanukkah was the time of a revolt against this pagan king. So what was going on from God's point of view in heaven? Let's take a heavenly overview of the situation. When had or you can even say Christ, when had Christ ruled over the earth from heaven? During this period, during this time, he had implemented the diaspora. Okay, diaspora means dispersion. So the dispersion of Israel. Israel was divided into two kingdoms, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, and both went into idolatry, not at the same time, but the northern kingdom went into idolatry first. You remember when the kingdoms were divided, Jeroboam took people north to Samaria and some other cities, the northern capital, and he implemented worship of a golden calf. And they fell for this. Why they would fall for that, I don't know. They had done so previously under Moses and Aaron, and you would think that problem had been completely corrected, but apparently there's a susceptibility to it that never seems to quite go out of style for some reason. And they had a golden calf up there in Samaria and probably some other places up there. So the Lord had sent prophets to warn them. Some of our great prophets in the Bible were prophets to the northern kingdom. They had warned them that if they did not repent completely, that they would be taken captive. They didn't listen to this, and in 720 BC, they were taken captive by Assyria. That's where you actually get the story of the Good Samaritan, because Assyria replaced the 10-tribe people with the lowest. The Bible calls them the lowest element of the people. Where do we know of a situation where that happened more recently? It happened in Cuba. Castro sent all the criminals, the insane, all the people with tragic problems. He sent them to America in boats, and it was a bizarre, awful thing that he did. Well, the lowest element of the people were transplanted into the northern kingdom. And so you have this, when you know that, you know how dramatic the story of the Good Samaritan is, because the people that should have helped the guy that was robbed on the road, like the Levite and so forth, they did not help him. But a Samaritan someone who was not, who was transplanted, who was not an Israelite, helped a man and bound up his wounds and gave money to an innkeeper to help him and said he would come back and help more. So this is extremely dramatic that even a Samaritan who the Jews had no dealings with because they were outsiders would actually step in and help. So you have to be, I would say, at least as faithful as a good Samaritan. And this is what Jesus was teaching. Okay, so that was not the only diaspora. That was a dispersion of Israel into Assyria. And then there was a further dispersion in 600 BC when Babylon came and took the southern kingdom captive. And we know a lot about that because that's when the Book of Mormon starts. At least page 1 is... I shouldn't say the whole Book of Mormon starts there because we have further scriptures about the Jaredites and so forth at an earlier time. But on page 1, we're talking about 600 BC, or right in that area, where Jerusalem is about to be overrun. And so the Lord shows Lehi and Nephi and the family how to build a boat and come to the Americas, come to the Promised Land. So this is the setting that we might say, the historical setting, the great overview that way before Hanukkah had come this great dispersion, this diaspora. And so what implemented, what was the motivation for the Lord chastising the people like this? It was pagan worship. So what was the good thing about Hanukkah? Was they were overthrowing paganism. So the Lord is generally pleased with that. He wants the people to take a stand against paganism. And so that's why he mentions it in John 10:22. He mentions the Feast of Dedication because he's honoring the effort that took place that overthrew the Maccabees implemented to overthrow the Greeks and rededicate the temple. Okay. Now my take on this is that it was generally too little, too late. You see, it's quite late. It's not 720 BC. It's not 600 BC. We're up here in the 300 BC area or 400 BC area.
Darren has a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Brother Fred. This is very interesting, and just something that came to mind that there's more a comment, not a question. But in my collection of Bibles that I have a Catholic Bible, and they actually have the account of Maccabees in that, the first book and second book of Maccabees, and it's directly after Malachi.
Right.
It's in their Bible, and that's it there. I don't know whether you can see it, but yeah, it gives that account, which is interesting because I know that you can get the account of Maccabees as Apocrypha online as well. So anyway, just to let people know, it is in the Bible after the account of Malachi, which you were saying. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, so, quick question would be like, did the Maccabean revolt fix the dispersion? Did they fix the diaspora? Was the Lord okay with everything after that? No, there was a lot more diaspora to come. It was too little, too late, and there was a lot more diaspora to come, including way up until my time in history, just before I was born, right after World War II, and this is after the Holocaust. So think of how vast the punishment for paganism the Lord implemented against Israel and against the Jews in particular, because what happened to the northern kingdom was interesting and unique. They migrated after their captivity. They were able to migrate. They migrated north and west. and they populated Western Europe. They went over the wall, so to speak. Scriptures say they went over the wall, Ephraim did, and they populated America. So if you want to know if Israel is in the Bible, or if you want to know if America is in the Bible, yes, America is actually called Israel. The 10 tribes of the northern kingdom is who migrated and populated the promised land. These are covenant people of Shem, all the way back to Shem, one of the sons of Noah, that you can attribute the promised land of the covenant people to in America. I once showed a graphic that I'd love to show. It was a picture of the world. It was a composite picture taken by NASA at night of the world and what it looked like from a satellite. And it showed all the lights of the world. The title of the graphic was "The Lights of the World." And Eastern or Western Europe and a lot of America was lit up with huge bright areas. The West, of course, was less bright, but then California and the East Coast, these coastal areas of America were extremely bright, and it showed how the migration had played out. Then we have Eastern Europe, which was also Western Europe, which also had some bright areas, and Eastern Europe, which was much less bright. And then we had China and Russia, which were even less bright. And then we have Africa, which was completely dark. Just a few little lights scattered here and there. It really shows you in the lights of the world how the migration of the tribes of Israel went into the world, and the light of the gospel. You can see how the light of the gospel really resulted in where we are today. It was a beautiful glimpse of that. All right, so the Lord was honoring Hanukkah, honoring the effort that took place, honoring the overthrow of paganism, but it was too little, too late, and there was much more diaspora or dispersion to come, and that didn't end until 1948, when the Jews became a nation in Israel, 1948. So that's an overview. You probably won't get that kind of overview anywhere else, but at least you got it here, and I hope you remember it. Read a little bit more about Hanukkah. The Festival of Lights is a Jewish festival commemorating the recovery of Jerusalem and subsequent rededication of the Second Temple at the beginning of the Maccabean revolt against the Seleucid, can't say that right, Empire in the 2nd century BCE. Hanukkah is observed for 8 nights and days, starting on the 25th day of Kislev. So we've just left the month of Kislev. We're now in the month of Tevet, according to the Hebrew calendar, which may occur at any time from late November to late December in the Gregorian calendar. The festival is observed by lighting the candles of the candelabrum with 9 branches. Now, if you ever went out and bought a menorah, you can buy a 7-branch menorah, which is the traditional menorah, or you can buy a 9-branch menorah, which is the Hanukkah menorah. One branch is typically placed above or below the others and is a candle used to light the other 8 candles. This unique candle is called the shamash, or the servant candle, the attendant. Each night, one additional candle is lit by the shamash until all 8 candles are lit together in the final night of the festival. Other Hanukkah festivities include singing Hanukkah songs, playing the game of dreidel, and eating oil-based foods such as latkes and something I can't pronounce here, and dairy foods. Since the 1970s, the worldwide Chabad Hasidic movement has initiated public menorah lightings in open public places in many countries. Originally instituted as a feast in the manner of Sukkot or booths, it doesn't come with the corresponding obligations or serious and holy designations as the other feast days, and is therefore a relatively minor holiday in strictly religious terms. Nevertheless, Hanukkah has attained major cultural significance in North America and elsewhere, especially among secular Jews. I think that's true, especially among secular Jews, due to its occurring around the same time as Christmas during the holiday season. Well, this year was a especially difficult time for Israel, the country of Israel, nation of Israel, because this entire ordeal of the atrocity that took place on October 7th has occurred during the Hanukkah season. So it's very difficult for them to celebrate or have 8 nights of celebration when in fact they have hostages and there's a big war going on. So it's been a difficult time, which we hope only hope will get better. All right, that's the that's the part that's not in your lesson. So I wanted to give you some additional information about Hanukkah. Okay, if you look on our Torah schedule, we are here at December the 16th. And yeah, there it is. And it's called Miketz, or at the end. So we'll try to find out what at the end refers to. Okay, the first teaching I've put out here is from 119 Ministries, one of my favorite. Parasha, or lesson points on Miketz, hope in God. So there's different ways to summarize that. One says at the end, and this says hope in God. Okay, welcome to another episode of Parasha Points, short thoughts from the weekly Torah portion. This week's Parasha point comes from Miketz, which is Hebrew for at the end, and it goes from Genesis 41 to 44. 44:1 to 44:17. This parasha tells the story of Joseph's interpretation of Pharaoh's dreams, which leads to his rise in power in Egypt. The story of Joseph is so glorious and so unique that I've included a teaching later, which I'm not sure how if we'll have time to get to it, but I'll encourage you to look through this. It tells all the many different tie-ins between Joseph and Christ. So Joseph is a type of Christ and has many things that can be correlated with Christ in his story, which is glorious. Due to a famine in the land of Canaan, Joseph's brothers traveled to Egypt to buy grain, where they encountered Joseph, who at this point is the second in command over all of Egypt. But after many years, Joseph's brothers didn't recognize him. They had kind of believed their own lie that they thought he was dead. And as far as they were concerned, they wanted him to be dead. But they sure didn't want to be accountable to him in any way. And sadly, this is kind of the story of how the Jews have treated Christ and treated Joseph. When we talk about the fathers, the great patriarchs or fathers, and remember where it says in the Bible, it talks about returning the fathers to the children and children to the fathers. That doesn't mean just earthly fathers. That means the patriarchs. Well, who are the patriarchs? The traditional way of listing them is Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Jews will always say that. I prefer to use a list of 4: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. But in Jewish teaching, we had a question?
Someone's trying to. Oh, it's Melba's coming online.
Okay. In Jewish teaching, they sadly, the history of Torah teaching with Jews is that it's part of the cover-up. There's so many tie-ins between Joseph and Christ that they completely cover up Christ and radically teach against him and won't allow proselyting for the most part. And this extends also to Joseph, because the story of Joseph correlates so strongly with many different types that are part of the life of Christ. So you don't hear much about Joseph, and you don't hear much about Jesus when you learn Judaism. But this is how it all got started. They're covering up, just like the brothers did. They didn't want to hear about him. They didn't want to know about him. They kind of told their dad he was dead, and I think they just wanted to leave it like that. Joseph orders his brothers to go back to Canaan and return with his brother Benjamin to Egypt. So they depart back home and then return to Egypt with Benjamin. The parashah concludes with Joseph detaining Benjamin. This is such a dramatic story. Even the thought of it brings tears to my eyes. There's a lot we can talk about in this Torah portion. Today we're going to present a thought on healing and hope. Joseph faced many painful trials. Out of hatred and bitter jealousy, his own family betrayed him, threw him into a pit, and sold him into slavery. Now, you thought you had family problems. The Lord is telling you to hold on, to endure your trials, and put them in his hands and lay them at his feet, and he will turn them into blessings for you. After that, he was falsely accused and sentenced to prison for a crime that he didn't commit. And yet, through a series of miraculous events in prison, Joseph was put in a position to directly advise the Pharaoh, which led him to being given authority over all Egypt. Now, this is a part of Egyptian history they don't talk about, but there were times when there was a lengthy period of time in which Egypt was ruled by Israel, by people from the house of Israel. Joseph's situation had entirely changed. He was no longer a slave or a prisoner, but second in command over Egypt. On top of that, God even gave him a wife and children. I would love at some point to meet Asenath. We don't know much about her, but she must have been quite a person as part of the family of Joseph, his wife. Genesis 41, 50 through 52. Before the year of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph. Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bore them to him. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for he said, God has made me forget all my hardship and all my father's house. The name of the second he called Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. I think it's interesting. We'll probably encounter this a little later, but we'll see that, Joseph, like a typical father of this time, he had a preference, and his preference was Manasseh. He wanted Manasseh to receive the firstborn blessing, but it was under the hand of Jacob later that it was given to Ephraim. So, that just brings up a little question to me, like, as great as Joseph was, he didn't discern immediately that Ephraim was the greater, or would see the greater blessing. He truly wanted to keep it going with Manasseh. There's a part in the Book of Mormon which is very hard to uncover. It's I think 3 Nephi 10, but it talks about who will assist my people in building the New Jerusalem. And a lot of people interpret that to be the Indians or Manasseh. So I have a friend who used to answer that by saying it was the tens of thousands of Ephraim and the thousands of Manasseh. So Ephraim is the more prominent one, not Manasseh. So I just thought I'd throw that in. Sometimes in life, you might face difficulties that seem utterly unbearable in the moment. You might feel that life will never get better, that you'll be stuck in the pain you feel forever. Maybe you've lost someone whom you love deeply, maybe someone close to you, a spouse or sibling or a parent, betrayed your trust or deserted you. Maybe in this moment you are reluctant to believe that God even cares or that you'll ever heal from your heartache. Did any of you watch that Dolly Parton movie last night? That was real interesting. It was actually had a very good message, but it portrayed the little girl who was very virtuous. It portrayed her as being very angry with God for a little while, and why she was so devastated by events in her home. And we can, that can overcome us if we're not careful. But we have to find a way to give it all back to God, and He makes it right. Understand that you are not alone. Okay, it's okay to not be okay. These deep and painful emotions are expressed all throughout the Bible. Read the Psalms sometimes. Read Job. Boy, talk about, wow, Job. An entire book of the Bible, Lamentations, is literally a 5-chapter lament in which Jeremiah bitterly cries out to God in agony and grief. Go ahead and let it go. Let it out. However, also understand that in the midst of your despair, comfort and hope is available. God is near to the brokenhearted. Psalm 34:18. In the midst of all your pain, He is there with you, holding you. While it's difficult to see past our current situations and feelings when we're in pain, we must remember that there is hope. Like Joseph, God will bring us through, and we will be able to heal and move forward. In the world to come, there'll be no more pain. Revelation 21:4. This is the great hope that we can hold on to as believers. And even in this life, we are not doomed to despair. Our God is capable of turning things around, pulling us out of our prison, if you will, and bringing us to a place where we can honestly say, God has made me forget all my hardship. He did it with Joseph. Don't give up. Hope in God. Psalm 42:11. Why are you cast down, O my soul, and why are you in turmoil within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise Him, my salvation and my God. Okay, that's the end of that teaching from 119 Ministries. Okay, let's go on down to the next one, which says Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dreams. Okay, I didn't give you a very good title page for this, but I'm not sure why I didn't do that. Okay, Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dreams. 41. After 2 whole years, Pharaoh dreamed he was standing by the Nile, and behold, there came up out of the Nile 7 cows, attractive and plump, and they fed in the reed grass. And behold, 7 other cows, ugly and thin, came up out of the Nile after them, and stood by the other cows on the bank of the Nile. And the ugly, thin cows ate up 7 attractive, plump cows. And Pharaoh awoke, and he fell asleep and dreamed a second time. And behold, 7 ears of grain, plump and good, were growing on one stalk. And behold, after them sprouted 7 ears, thin and blighted by the east wind. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump, full ears. And Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. So in the morning his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men. Pharaoh told him his dreams, but there was none who could interpret them to Pharaoh. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, I remember my offenses today. When Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me and the chief baker in custody in the house of the captains of the guard, we dreamed on the same night, he and I, each having a dream with its own interpretation. A young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. When we told him, he interpreted our dreams to us, giving an interpretation to each man according to his dream. And as he interpreted to us, so it came about. I was restored to my office, and the baker was hanged. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they quickly brought him out of the pit. And when he had shaved himself and changed his clothes, he came in before Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. I have heard it said that of you, that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Joseph answered Pharaoh, It is not in me. Elohim will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. Then Pharaoh, always give glory to God. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, Behold, in my dream, I was standing on the banks of the Nile. 7 cows and plump and attractive came up out of the Nile and fed in the reed grass. 7 other cows came up after them, poor and very ugly and thin, such eyes I had never seen in all the land of Egypt. And the thin, ugly cows ate up the first 7 plump cows, but when they had eaten them, no one would have known that they had eaten them, for they were still as they were still as ugly as at the beginning. Then I awoke. I also saw in my dream 7 ears growing on one stalk, full and good. 7 ears, withered thin and blighted by the east wind, sprouted after them, and the thin ears swallowed up 7 good ears. And I told it to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, the dreams of Pharaoh are one. Elohim has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good ears are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dreams are one. The 7 lean and ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty years, blighted by the east wind, are also 7 years of famine. It is as I told Pharaoh, Elohim has shown to Pharaoh what he is about to do. There will come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt, but after them there will arise 7 years of famine, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. The famine will consume the land, and the plenty will be unknown in the land by reason of the famine that will follow, for it will be very severe. And the doubling of Pharaoh's dreams means that the thing is fixed by Elohim, such as in the mouth of 2 witnesses. And Elohim will shortly bring it about. Now therefore let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh proceed to appoint overseers over the land and take 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 plentiful years, and let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. That food will be a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine that are to occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish through the famine. Joseph rises to power. This proposal pleased Pharaoh and all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find a man like this, in whom is a spirit of Elohim? Then Pharaoh, I just remembered the story. I'll go ahead and tell this story. I was involved in home ministry at Enoch Hill in my early priesthood. I was a young priest, and I was amazed that Enoch Hill had started this program of home ministry. There's a big story behind that. And so we went out about our visits, and we were doing our visits, and we were having good success. And then it occurred to me that there was a problem. And the problem was that there were no overseers. There was nobody, I called them sergeants. There was no sergeants in the field taking in the reports and kind of taking an account of who was doing what and how the whole thing was going. So I went to the pastor and I said, to me, there needs to be somebody appointed to be an overseer or a sergeant in the field to kind of oversee the results of what this is doing, how this is going. I was just a young priest. I was new. The pastor looked right at me and he said, Fred, would you do that? I was in profound shock. I was not expecting that. I did not think he would make me the sergeant, the overseer. And so I took that seriously, and I started in the Enoch Hill was a large congregation. I started in the Enoch Hill directory, and I started with the letter A, and I went all through every single name, and I kind of surveyed the congregation and got a sense of what each family's situation was, and then from there we started making assignments. So that this very thing happened to me. It's about to happen to Joseph. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since Elohim has shown you all this, there is none so discerning and wise as you are. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only as regards the throne will I be greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. Wow. Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and clothed him in garments of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. And he made him ride in the second chariot, and they called out before him, bow the knee, Thus he set him over all the land of Egypt. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without your consent no one shall lift up hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphenath Paneah, and he gave him in marriage Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. So Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph, see, there's a type of Christ right there, 30 years old. Christ started his ministry. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went through all the land of Egypt. During the 7 plentiful years, the earth produced abundantly, and he gathered up all the food of these 7 years which occurred in the land of Egypt and put the food in the cities. He put in every city the food from the fields around it, and Joseph stored up grain in great abundance, like the sand of the sea, until he ceased to measure it, for it could not be measured. Now, those bins, or those grain storing structures, are still there, and it's interesting to see that when you go to Israel. Before the year of famine came, 2 sons of Joseph were born to Joseph. Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bore them to him. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for he said, Elohim has made me forget all my hardship and all my father's house. The name of the second he called Ephraim, for Elohim has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. The 7 years of plenty that occurred in the land of Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began to come. As Joseph had said, there was famine in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. When all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, Go to Joseph, what he says to you do. So when the famine had spread over all the land, Joseph opened up all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. Moreover, all the earth came to Egypt, to Joseph to buy grain, because the famine was severe all over the earth. Joseph's brothers go to Egypt. When Jacob learned that there was grain for sale in Egypt, he said to his sons, Why do you look at one another? And he said, Behold, I have heard that there is grain for sale in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there. Now, he was wealthy. This whole family was a wealthy family. Buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die. So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with his brothers, for he feared that harm might happen to him. Now, Joseph was the son of Rachel, right? And I think and so was Benjamin. So it's interesting that Rachel was blessed in that way. Thus the sons of Israel came to buy among the others who came, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was governor over the land. He was the one who sold to all the people of the land, and Joseph's brothers came and bowed themselves before him and their faces to the ground. Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he treated them like strangers and spoke roughly to them. Where do you come from? He said. They said, From the land of Canaan to buy food. And Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. And Joseph remembered the dreams that he had dreamed of them, and he said to them, You are spies, you have come to see the nakedness of the land. They said to him, No, my lord, your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man, we are honest men, except when they dealt with Joseph. Your servants have never been spies. He said to them, No, it is the nakedness of the land that you have come to see. And they said, We, your servants, are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is no more. Wow. But Joseph said to them, It is as I said to you, you are spies, but by this you shall be tested. By the life of Pharaoh, you shall not go from this place until this is so dramatic. This place until your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you and let him bring your brother while you remain confined, that your words may be tested, whether there is truth in you, or else by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies. And he put them all together in custody for 3 days. On the 3rd day, Joseph said to them, Do this and you will live, for I fear Elohim. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers remain confined where you are in custody, and let the rest of you carry grain for the famine for your households, and bring your youngest brother to me, so your words will be verified, and you shall not die. And they did so. Then they said to one another, in truth, we are guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the distress of his soul when he begged us, and we did not listen. That is why this distress has come upon us. And Reuben answered them, did I not tell you not to sin against this boy? But you did not listen. So now there comes a reckoning for his blood. They did not know that Joseph understood them, for there was an interpreter between them. Then he turned away from them and wept. And he returned to them and spoke to them, and he took Simeon from them and bound him before their eyes. And Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain and to replace every man's money in his sack and to give them provisions for the journey. This was done for them. Then they loaded their donkeys with their grain and departed. And as one of them opened the sack to give his donkey fodder at the lodging place, he saw his money in the mouth of his sack. He said to his brothers, my money has been put back. Here it is in the mouth of my sack. At this, their hearts failed them, and they turned trembling to one another, saying, what is this that I just can't get out of trouble. What is this that Elohim has done to us? When they came to Jacob their father in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them, saying, the Lord of the land, spoke roughly to us and took us to be spies of the land. But we said to him, we are honest men, we have never been spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is this day with our father in the land of Canaan. Then the Lord of the land, said to us, by this I shall know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me, and take grain for the famine of your households, and go your way. Bring your youngest brother to me, then I shall know that you are not spies, but honest men, and I will deliver your brother to you, and you shall trade in the land. As they emptied their sacks, behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. And Jacob their father said to them, you have bereaved me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more. And now you would take Benjamin. All this has come against me. Then Reuben said to his father, kill my 2 sons if I do not bring them back to you. Put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you. But he said, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is the only one left. If harm should happen to him on the journey that you are to make, you would bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to Sheol. Joseph's brothers returned to Egypt. Now the famine was severe in the land, and when they had eaten the grain that they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, go again, buy us a little food. But Judah said to him, the man solemnly warned us, saying, you shall not see my face. You talk about orchestrated. This is so profoundly orchestrated by God. You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you will send our brother with us, we will go down and buy you food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. Israel said, now who is Israel? Israel is Jacob. His name was changed to Israel. Why did you treat me so badly as to tell the man that you had another brother? They replied, the man questioned us carefully, as only Joseph could do, about ourselves and our kindred, saying, is your brother still alive? Do you have another brother? What we told him was in answer to these questions. Could we in any way know that he would say, bring your brother down? And Judah said to Israel his father, send the boy with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and you, and also our little ones. I will be a pledge of his safety. From my hand you shall require him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. If we had not delayed, we would now have returned twice. Then their brother Israel said to him, if it must be so, then do this. Take some of the choice fruits of the land in your bags and carry a present. Down to the man, a little balm and a little honey. Jacob was pretty adamant against doing this, but I think the Lord must have softened his heart. for this to have a turnaround like that. Gum, myrrh, pistachios, nuts, and almonds. Take double the money with you. Carry back with you the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight. Take also your brother and arise and go again to the man. May Elohim Almighty grant you mercy before the man, and may he send back your other brother and Benjamin. And as for me, if I am bereaved of my children, I am bereaved. So the men took this present, and they took double the money with them, and they arose and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, bring the men into the house and slaughter an animal and make ready, for the men are to dine with me at noon. The man did as Joseph told him and brought the men to Joseph's house. And then the men were afraid because they were brought to Joseph's house. And they said, it is because of the money which was replaced in our sacks the first time that we are brought in, so that he may assault us and fall upon us and make us servants and seize our donkeys. So they went up to the steward of Joseph's house and spoke with him at the door of the house and said, O my Lord, we came down the first time to buy food. And when we came to the lodging place, we opened our sacks, and there was each man's money in the mouth of his sack, our money in full weight. So we have brought it again with us, and we have brought other money down with us to buy food. We do not know who put our money in our sacks. He replied, peace to you, do not be afraid. Your Elohim and the Elohim of your father has put treasure in your sacks for you. I received your money. Then he brought Simeon out to them, and when the man had brought the men into the Joseph's house and given them water, and they had washed their feet, and when he had given their donkeys fodder, they prepared the present for Joseph's coming at noon, for they heard that they should eat bread there. When Joseph came home, they brought into the house to him the present that they had with them, and bowed down to him to the ground. And he inquired about their welfare and said, is your father well? The old man of whom you spoke, is he still alive? They said, your servant, our father, is well. He is still alive. And they bowed their heads and prostrated themselves. And he lifted up his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, is this your youngest brother of whom you spoke to me? Elohim be gracious to you, my son. Then Joseph hurried out, for his compassion grew warm for his brother, and he sought a place to weep. And he entered his chamber and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out, and controlling himself, he said, serve the food. They served him by himself, and them by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. And they sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked at one another in amazement. Portions were taken to them from Joseph's table, but Benjamin's portion was five times as much as any of theirs, and they drank and were merry with him. I had a unusual experience. I myself went to Israel, and after touring Israel, I went to Egypt. So these guys are down in Egypt, and when I was leaving Egypt, I was putting out my credit card to pay for my hotel stay, and this fear came on me that they wouldn't take my credit card. That was unfounded, and they did, and it worked. But I was just, this fear came on me. I was horribly afraid that it wouldn't work. And so all these scenarios began to go through my mind, like, what if it doesn't work? What will they do? Will they arrest me? Will have to call the American consulate? I just couldn't get this fear out of me, and so none of that happened. And I got on the plane, and I was still afraid. I thought they're going to call me back. I thought they're going to, before the plane ever takes off, they're going to call my name and say your money didn't work, and that didn't happen. And so even when the plane took off, I was still afraid. I thought they're going to call the plane back, and it wasn't until we were way out of Egypt airspace that we were heading to Germany that that I started to calm down. But I think the Lord gave me that experience so that I would understand the fear that these people experienced in the Bible. It was real, and only the Lord could remove it. Joseph tests his brothers. Then he commanded the steward of his house, fill the man's sacks with food, as much as they can carry, and put each man's money in the mouth of his sack, and put my cup, the silver cup, in the mouth of the sack of the, of the youngest with his money for the grain. And they did as Joseph told him. As soon as the morning was light, the men were sent back with their donkeys. They had gone only a short distance from the city. Then Joseph said to his steward, up, follow after the man, and when you overtake them, say to them, why, why, this is unbelievable. Why have you repaid evil for good? Is it not from this day, from this that my Lord drinks, and by this that he practices divination? You have done evil in doing this. When he overtook them, he spoke to them these words. They said to him, why does my Lord speak such words as these? Far be it from your servant to do such a thing. Behold, the money that we found in the mouth of our sacks we brought back to you from the land of Canaan. How then would we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? Whichever of your servants is found with it shall die, and we also will be my Lord's servants, he said. Let it be as you say, he who is found with it shall be my servant, and the rest of you shall be innocent. Then each man quickly lowered his sack to the ground, and each man opened his sack, and he searched, beginning with the eldest and ending with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they tore, wow, they tore their clothes, and every man loaded his donkey, and they returned to the city. When Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house, he was still there. They fell before him to the ground. Joseph said to them, what deed is this that you have done? Do you not know that a man like me can indeed practice divination? And Judah said, what shall we say to my Lord? What shall we speak, or how can we clear ourselves? Elohim has found out the guilt of your servants. Behold, we are my Lord's servants, both we and he also in whose hand the cup has been found. But he said, far be it from me that I should do so. Only the man in whose hand the cup was found shall be my servant. But as for you, go in peace to your father. Well, obviously, this goes on to a very happy ending. And Jacob then comes down to Egypt, and it's quite a time in history when Israel comes out of Egypt. And if I'm not mistaken, if you look on the back of your dollar bill, let's see if I have a dollar bill. Okay, on the back of a dollar bill, what do we see? A pyramid. A pyramid. This commemorates the historical origin of Israel in Egypt. Israel is another word for America. What are these 13 stripes on a flag? It's the 13 colonies, but it's also the 13 tribes of Israel. So it's interesting to me that our history has roots in Egypt, in this entire story with Joseph. All right. What?
That is.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. All right, let's see here. I think we'll skip the next one because we have had two good summaries of our teaching today. Okay, we're going to skip several pages, and after where it says Brit Hadashah overview, keep going.
Okay.
And we come to a place of Keep going.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Right there. I want to start with this. I want to be sure and read a few of these. There's a lot of them, but I wanted to read some of them anyway. If you've never seen this, I think this will be some good information if you can ever get this copied out. It's lengthy, but I wanted to read part of it. Becky, will you hand me a Kleenex? Thank you. As I said earlier, Joseph is a type of Christ, and the Jews, for that reason, I think they have generally ignored him. But here's some tie-ins between Joseph and Jesus that I wanted to get to today. Number one, Joseph's mother, Rachel, was barren, and her pregnancy was the result of the direct intervention of God. Jesus' mother was Mary. Miriam was a virgin. Her pregnancy was the result of the direct intervention of God. Two, the birth of Rachel's son would remove reproach from Israel. The birth of Yeshua was for the glory of the people of Israel. Yeshua would also be the light to nations. Three, the name Joseph means may he add, a wordplay given by Rachel to express her hope for more children. Jesus means Yahweh saves and denotes the deliverance of God's children. Through Yeshua, God would add children to Israel. Four, Joseph was the firstborn son of Rachel, who is considered the matriarch of Israel. Yeshua was the firstborn son of Mary, who is considered the matriarch of the church. 5. The birth of Joseph marked the end of Israel's exile from the land. After his birth, his father left. I can't read today. After his birth, his father Jacob left Laban for the promised land. The birth of Yeshua marked the end of Israel's spiritual exile. 6. In Jewish tradition, Joseph is regarded as the nemesis of Esau, who is considered the personification of Gentile power and oppression of Israel. Yeshua overcame the powers of darkness by and through the victory of the cross. He is the serpent slayer, the ultimate nemesis of the Satan and his servants. 7. Joseph was Joseph was a precocious young man who was filled with dreams given to him from heaven. Yeshua was at the temple discussing Torah with the sages when he was 12 years old. He was a precocious child who was filled with dreams of heaven. There's an interesting scripture that says that he could not be taught. Now, he did grow line upon line and precept upon precept, but it was not because he just because he was taught correctly. He could not be taught. 8. Joseph was beloved of his father. He was Ben Yachid, and as Isaac was regarded by Abraham. This is Jesus. This is my beloved son, in whom I am well pleased. Yeshua is also described as Ben Yachid, only begotten of the Father. 9. Joseph was shepherd. Yeshua was the Messiah is called the Good Shepherd. 10. Joseph was raised in the Promised Land, and Yeshua was raised in the Promised Land. All right, I'm going to stop there because this just kind of goes on and on. But if you're interested in that, be sure to get a copy of it. I think it's useful, good information. All right, I think we'll stop here with our Torah lesson, and I'll turn it over. If you have any questions or comments or anything you'd like to add, go ahead and do that. Okay, I don't hear anything, so there's one. Hi, Bob. What can I do?
It's me. I'm sorry, I was a little late.
That's okay.
when you were reading about Joseph, you said it talked about him practicing divination.
Yeah, yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, that was a practice they had. Don't ask me how it works, but you could look into the wine in the cup, and you could, depending on the whatever was doing there, you could give answers for problems. Now, I noticed that too, and I would say Joseph was a man of God and could tell. He could interpret these dreams. It wasn't divination, but that's the way they would relate to it. They're like, well, he's a great diviner of dreams and things like that. Well, he just used that as an example. He thought that they were. I mean, he didn't think, but he was accusing them of wanting that cup so they could do divination too. You see, so I think it's just an interesting way that Joseph phrased that. But I don't think he practiced that Egyptian divination. I think he did it by God's power.
One of the McClellans.
Okay, go ahead.
Just a comment. Whenever I have read the account of Joseph being sold into Egypt, I've just got to comment how that is emotionally effective in my understanding of all of the scripture that's ever been given. And I'm talking about when Joseph is sort of teasing his brothers,
Right.
and how when eventually Benjamin gets there, and he is overcome with sort of emotion as well, and he's got to leave the room.
Right.
And I relate to that because even in the story, it moves me that way, and I feel very humble, and I put myself in that position of Joseph and how you would feel when your brother, after not seeing him for that time and then realizing that he's here and your father is alive. And
Right.
boy, I just had to say that because every time I read it, I am caused to feel that same feeling. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. I agree with you totally. It's one of the most emotional moments in all of Scripture. I tear up every time I read it myself. It's glorious how beautiful and wonderful Joseph's character is, his heart, his love for his family, and the way the Lord constructed this. That's why I said earlier, the orchestration of things is just phenomenal. How God does that. I'm curious when we die and have our time with God in the afterlife, if we're privileged to be servants of His and sent on missions, I'm sure some of that same orchestration will give us the words to say in the moment we need of them, and so forth. And I mean, it really shows you the range of God's emotions and how He works with His servants. And I hope to be to share with that. All right. Well, I'll turn it over to Brother Rex then.
Okay.
Thank you for the class, Brother Fred.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you.
Rearrange our mic here and the camera just a second. There. Yes, thank you, Brother Fred. Much appreciated the class. At this time, I think we'll go ahead and go into our season of prayer, and because we were doing that, I'm going to go ahead and end the recording.